authorized 2 operations in Iraq. First, I directed our military to take action to protect our American diplomats and military advisors serving in the city of Erbil. In recent days, terrorist forces neared the city. Thursday night, I made it clear that if they attempt to advance further, our military would respond with targeted strikes. That's what we've done. And if necessary, that's what we'll continue to do. We have Americans serving across Iraq, including our embassy in Baghdad, and we will do whatever is needed to protect our people.
It will not be difficult for anyone to come up with an example of how badly America conducts wars in certain parts of the world. Afghanistan and Iraq will go down as monumental failures no matter how you slice it. But the current administration may take the prize for being the least informed, the least prepared, and having done the very least to stave off what has become another pull on American military might to become involved in Iraq. We are involved, and Americans once again want to know answers to why, what happened, and what's next. Welcome back to MidPoint, former veteran member of the CIA clandestine service, CIA station chief, and someone who knows the Iraq situation intimately. Gary Berntsen joins us on the show. Gary, thanks so much for being here.
Pleasure to be with you today.
Gary, I'm going to begin with Secretary of State John Kerry in Sydney, Australia today, talking about the formation of an Iraqi government being critical to stability. And of course, he mentions Prime Minister al-Maliki. Here's that soundbite.
Government formation process is critical in terms of sustaining the stability and calm in Iraq. And our hope is that Mr. Maliki will not stir those waters.
Al-Maliki has indeed stirred those waters, Gary, because the Iraqi president has nominated a new prime minister. Al-Maliki says he is not going. He's talking about lawsuits against the president. The simple first question, who is in charge in Iraq?
Well, clearly, if you go back to what just the tape that you just played, John Kerry states, our hope is Maliki will not disrupt this process. Foreign policy is not managed with hope. Maliki, of course, has been a bad actor in all of this. He needs to be removed from the process. But this administration's acts essentially are just completely separate from reality. The discussion and even the statements by the president that we will defend Erbil and the U.S. consulate. And it's almost like Meade talking about pushing Lee back, out of Gettysburg and failing to pursue him across the border, which, back in our Civil War. ISIS needs to be destroyed. We need to have a campaign right now of 200 airstrikes a day on ISIS, not the pinpricks that we've had. We need to be going after them because this is a cancer that is growing across the Middle East. The longer we wait to engage aggressively, the more difficult this is going to be in the end. And the president and Secretary Kerry have failed totally to grasp the danger that is at hand.
What kind of a saturation effort are we talking here? Because we have seen videotape of American fighters now dropping bombs on certain ISIS positions. We see them every time now simply because war is more video than anything else. But what then are we talking about, knowing full well here, Gary, that we're discussing air power here and not troops on the ground?
Well, let me say this. If you were to go back and look at how we invaded Afghanistan initially, and I was leading CIA's largest team during that, we had 135 CIA and 350 special forces on the ground in Afghanistan. We drove out 70,000 members of the Taliban back in 2001. We don't need a lot of people on the ground, but we need a few people on the ground. We need special operations forces. We need some agency people there organizing this and coordinating the airstrikes. And we need to not just defend, Baghdad and Erbil. ISIS needs to be destroyed. And the sooner we get down to the business. But the problem is, this administration is waiting and hoping to fix the situation in Baghdad. This thing could drag out a long time. And actually, we could be in the last death throes of the Maliki regime and even the government of Iraq. The ISIS forces have moved south and they're encircling Baghdad as we speak.
Let me clarify what you said, because you've been there, you know the situation, you know what the tactical needs are. Are you then saying that despite all the air forces, no matter what you do, no matter what your airstrikes are, that this situation simply cannot be resolved unless there are some American troops back on the ground in Iraq? And we're talking about those troops that are actually there for a reason and not just to sit and try to train people.
Right. I don't think that we can do this the way this was done in Kosovo, where we had just an air campaign, even though that would degrade them. But to have the greatest effect, the most rapid effect, to integrate things, having small teams on the ground that are calling in air power, that are interacting with our Kurdish partners and others to get intelligence, to push it back into our system, would make the system work much better. And I'm not talking large numbers of forces, maybe a couple of hundred. That's it, maximum 100 or 200 people. It would make a gigantic difference. The problem in this is this administration is so afraid of its own left that it's going to be criticized by the liberals and the progressives in the U.S. government that it will not act. And this act is going to be drawn out, and it's going to be much, much more painful for everyone because of the delays and the inaction on the part of this administration.
Strategically speaking, then, would it be fair to say that if you don't put someone on the ground now, a couple of hundred, whatever you're talking about here, but every day you wait, the possibility exists that you could cost more lives if you wait, and also you are continuing to make ISIS a stronger factor no matter what happens in the air?
Exactly right. And actually, you could start losing major portions of the city of Baghdad. You could have a collapse. Now, there are a lot of those that believe that the Iranians will jump in and will enter if ISIS does that. The problem, which most people are not, recognizing, is that the Iranian military equipment, whether it's aircraft, artillery, armor, all of these things, have been without spare parts for decades. They can field light infantry. Their equipment is not ready for prime time. And the irony is, ISIS probably has better equipment than the Iranian government.
Wait a minute, say that again, because ISIS having better equipment. Now, are we talking about the equipment that they have had before they actually started to create this state, that they stole from Americans and basically took what was left on the ground? Yeah,
that's the irony. They probably have better equipment than the Iranians would bring to the fight. Remember, Iran has gone without spare parts for decades. They're cannibalizing things. They have a lot of stuff that doesn't work at all. They are very, very concerned. We've choked them off with sanctions for years. And again, Iran can bring militias on the ground. They can build organizations that can defend or create an insurgency, but engaging in direct, against a defending force, it's going to be hard for the Iranians.
The Kurdish Peshmerga fighters are seen as some of the fiercest fighters in that region. They are certainly seen as being fearless. If you were then to take as many weapons as possible, because the Peshmerga representatives themselves are saying, we have older weapons, we need weapons right now in order to compete, if you will. If you were to put in all you could, do everything you can to give the Peshmerga what they need, could they put up a force that would at least stop ISIS, perhaps not even be able to defeat it at this time, but at least create some kind of a force against them?
The Peshmerga, and there was a report today from AP that the U.S. is now arming the Peshmerga. Peshmerga representatives were complaining that Maliki was not sharing armaments that were sent to the U.S. that was supposed to be forwarded to the Kurdish regional government. Now the U.S. is purportedly, from reporting today, that there is weaponry going to the Peshmerga. They will be able to hold their own ground. You cannot count on the Peshmerga to go back in and recover lost ground in Sunni areas, but the Peshmerga should be able to hold Kurdistan.
Is it now also fair to say that in your experience and from what you're hearing regarding, let's go back to al-Maliki for a moment here, still technically in power, not wanting to leave, is it fair to say that America would back anybody at this point simply just to get him out, and they really don't have a choice at this time? They're going to be stuck with somebody that very possibly they don't want.
Well, the president has selected, the deputy prime minister has selected someone, or the deputy speaker of the House, and apparently anybody but Maliki at this point. Maliki has been a bad actor. He has conducted himself almost like Saddam Hussein, but as a Shia. He has attacked the Sunni minority, alienated them, drove them into the arms of ISIS. He is responsible for the failed collapse by putting political allies in senior military positions. Maliki needs to go. I agree with the Obama administration and Secretary Kerry's efforts to get rid of him, but they cannot wait to resolve the Maliki issue and then act militarily. We need to be acting militarily at the same time, right now, and much more forcefully.
I got about 45 seconds left then. And again, we speak to you because you've been there on the ground. You know the situations here. You know the tactical situations here. We've talked about, and you have said that we have to put American troops on the ground in Iraq, or this is apparently going to be another lost war. Is or does the focus have to be, no matter what, kill ISIS? Let's get right to it here, and let's stop dancing around this right now. But America, if they want to go in, you've got to go in. You got to put bullets in their heads. You got to kill them as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
We have to do to them what we did to the Taliban back in 2001. We've engaged them and assault them destroy them. They have to be destroyed as a fighting force. If you see what they're doing on television, they're crucifying people, beheading people, burying people alive, forcing people to convert, trapping, thousands of people on mountains and having them starve to death and die in the heat. These people are evil. And when facing evil, as Edmund Burke said, the only thing that's required for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing. We have got to act.
We will leave it at that. Gary Berntsen, always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll do it again.
Pleasure.
All right, later on this hour, American voters have either a great passion to forgive or are the biggest part of the problem with regard to dishonest and morally bankrupt politicians. After the break, inside the arena on Iraq, Syria, and much more as MidPoint continues.